right, welcome to Launch Stories. We're all about connecting and educating Chilliwack entrepreneurs. I believe you're from Hope. You're welcome to be here. Our guest is from Abbotsford. Our message is the same, but our core is Chilliwack. Studio C at Cowork Chilliwack is located in the traditional and unceded territory of the Stalo people, and we appreciate being able to do everything we do on this land. Thanks to our sponsors for helping us put these monthly events on, the Chilliwack Economic Partners, the Chilliwack Innovation Network, and the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce. A whole lot of Chilliwacks. Let's hear it for them. And thanks to our partners for organizing Launch Stories every month, Cowork Chilliwack, Currency Marketing, and Zinum Ventures. And special thanks to Elise for running the AV equipment, and you can probably see her up here. There she is in her domain, pressing all the buttons. And let's hear it for our partners and our special operator in the control room. I'm thrilled to introduce you to our guest this evening. He is the Winery Manager at Maan Farms. Please give a warm Launch Story welcome to Gaurav Maan. I'm super self-conscious because I've butchered your name already.
That's okay.
Was that pretty close?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Pretty good.
I don't feel like I'm in grade school anymore, so that's good.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you coming out and being in the hot seat. And I had the opportunity to visit your operation last week, and it's quite something. So
thank you.
We've got an hour. I think it's going to take all of that hour to even touch on everything you do. So
sure. My
first question for all my guests is, give me the elevator pitch on what Maan Farms is and does.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We're a third-generation family business, so that's our core, and we're farmers. So there's 3 generations of us, like I mentioned. We farm strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, corn, pumpkins. So that's the heart of our business, but we also do fun, which is our agri-tourism side. So we offer events like goat yoga. We do our pumpkin patch, haunted corn maze. There's a petting zoo. There's a play area. It's a really fun operation, and there's also families. So what that means is families come together. They enjoy our place. And I didn't mention the winery, but I'm the winery manager, now the director of winery operations. But yeah,
okay.
So that's kind of the business and the gist of it.
Well, it was founded in 1982 by your grandparents.
Yes.
How did they start the farm?
Well, it's a typical immigrant story. They looked for a better place to be for their families. They had $20 in their pocket, and they decided, let's go to Vancouver, or let's go to BC. And they took my dad as well. So it was my grandparents and my dad. My dad was 14 at the time. Okay. And they came in the early 70s. And they pulled together as much as they could. They bought a property on Mackenzie Road. We're on 790 Mackenzie. Our first property was actually the closest property to the border. I think it's 111 Mackenzie. And you could literally see the border from that side. So that was the very first property that they purchased. And they pulled everything together, and they started growing cold crops. And as a farmer, even back then, it was hard to make a living. And somebody came to my grandpa, and he was like, why don't you just sell this to the public? And we opened up our first fruit stand. And that's kind of how the spark ignited. That was our first innovation, was going from selling to the middleman to selling direct to consumer.
Excuse my ignorance, cold crop. What's a cold crop?
A cold crop would be like Brussels sprouts.
Got it.
Something like that versus...
my favorite.
Yeah, right? So, yeah, something like that. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so right from the get-go, your brother probably worked on the farm too, right?
Yeah, so honestly...
I'm sorry, their son. Your grandparents' son, your father.
Yes.
Not your brother, your father worked on probably from the get-go.
Yeah, no, yes. Exactly. So my dad was there. He married my mom in 86, 86. And she worked heavily in the business. The funniest thing is if you were there back then and you looked at our business and our family and you saw the hardest working person, that's actually my grandma. So that's where my dad gets his hard work. That's where we get our hard work. So she was the one in the fields doing all the hard work. And then my dad came, he became an engineer by himself. He worked the same job for 50 years. He retired maybe, I think it was like 5-6 years ago. and he retired as a chief engineer. And somehow he was able to spark whatever he had in him in all of us. So all of us, meaning myself, my brother, my two sisters, we all grew up on the farm, selling berries at our fruit stand.
Wow.
So we weren't the typical kid that went to soccer practice or went to play with their friends. We were at the berry stand selling berries. So entrepreneurship that's where it kind of sparked.
Did you love it, or was it a chore?
Honestly, it was really fun. I didn't know anything else. So you could say I was brainwashed. I didn't know what soccer practice was or what playing basketball was. I'm sure when I was born, I was like a few months old because I was born in June. I'm sure my mom had me while she was selling berries on the side of the road, right? So that was ingrained in us. And that's just how we grew up. And sure, it probably started as a chore, it probably felt as a chore sometimes, but I love what I do now, and I'm sure that started then, right? So.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
And so there's nowhere on the site, your dad's name is Chris,
yes,
but it says Mama Man everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And as you mentioned, she's the heart and soul of the operation, but
yes.
You mentioned your dad also worked outside of the farm business and was an
Yes.
engineer. Where did he do his engineering?
He worked at Snowcrest Packers.
Okay,
Yes.
got it. That's in Abbotsford as well?
It's in Abbotsford, yes, correct. Yeah.
And was he responsible for like the machinery? And
He was responsible for the whole plant, basically.
Wow.
He was the chief engineer. He was actually the head of the union as well. So he had a great deal of responsibility.
And so he balanced that with also working in the farm?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and having 4 kids. All right, so.
And I see 3 of you are currently working in the business. You've got
Yes.
yourself, your brother, and your sister. They both share the title of operations manager, and now you're director. I've got winery manager,
That's
but you're
okay.
the director of wine operations?
Yes.
Got it. How did that come to be, the way you've divvied up the responsibility?
Honestly, I don't know. Personally, when I grew up, I wasn't a big fan of farming. I remember having a conversation with my dad. I was like, I don't want to be a farmer. And I'm sure that probably stuck with him. He's like, how do I make sure Gaurav stays involved in the business? And he had opened the winery a couple years before that. And he's like, why don't we try Gaurav in the winery? Give him 100%, responsibility, see how he does. And he let me fail. Right? My brother, he's always loved agriculture growing up. He did a BBA in agriculture. He went to study in Holland. Some of his biggest mentors are his university teachers from the University of Fraser Valley in Chilliwack.
Okay.
And my sister, she had a very interesting journey. Gurleen, she actually grew up on the farm selling berries, fruit stand, and she went and she did her education. I'm pretty sure she did criminology. And she went and worked for ICBC, downtown Vancouver. I think it was in Burnaby Beach, but she lived downtown Vancouver. And after doing that for multiple years, she's like, let's come back to the farm. So you can imagine the pull the family business has.
Right.
And how much opportunity there was for somebody to go and do a corporate job, make lots of money, and then come back to the family business.
It is ICBC though, right?
Yes.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
I imagine that's a tough one, but yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And you also did some post-secondary. You went to UFE. What did you take?
So I did a BBA in economics.
Okay.
Yes.
So you were learning in your mind of how the economics work and how the farm business,
100%.
all with the goal of coming back. And so you were already working in the winery, and did you do that specifically or on the side while you were still working in the farm business, going to school?
Going to school? Well, I started going to school, I think it was 2013, and that was the same year the winery started. So from 2014 to about 2017, I completed my degree, and at the same time, I was working full-time. So I would go to school, and then after school, I might go make wine. There's days that I was there till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Just like you have that passion, you want to work, or there might be a filtration going on that's not going to finish for a couple hours, and you got to stay. And then during the day, before school or maybe during the break, I would go and sell wine to customers. So I just love that hustle.
you've got a really great website, and I looked through, and there's a whole history, and thought, okay, well, maybe we could work chronologically, but then I thought that would take us 3 days to get through this. And so I decided to just work through in the level of that you have across the website. And so before jumping to that, though, for the first 18, 20 years of the farm's existence, it was primarily a farm.
Yes.
And then in the 80s, you transitioned, or rather in the 2005, 2006,
Yep.
introduced agri-tourism. How did that come to be? What sparked the idea? Was it happening in and around Abbotsford at the time already?
Well, yeah, there were some local friends of ours that came to my parents, so like, why don't you put in a petting zoo? And my mom, her name is Devinder, so they call her Mama Man, but she is honestly one of the most innovative people in our business. So you call us, like, maybe the kids are more innovative than the parents, but I think it goes hand in hand. And she said, let's open up a petting zoo. And we started with, I think there was like a one slide, there was a sandbox, and we had some goats and chickens. And that's how we started. And every year we added on more and more, and then it became the Barnyard Adventureland. So, and honestly, we owe a lot of credit to our friends, farm friends, people who have been influencers on us, well, they're all over the world that do agri-tourism. And then once we started, we realized that agriculture, you put money in the dirt, you take money out of the dirt. And sometimes there's nothing left over. So you got to be innovative out there, and you've got to, figure out a way to make agriculture fun. And we decided to do agri-tourism, and it's been amazing. Like, I know my friends, and some of them have kids, and they have farms. They don't want to go work on their farm, but they want to come to my farm because my farm is fun, right? So it's a full life cycle of, you start young, you bring somebody to the farm, and they love it.
So you added this whole barn facility as well as the country store and so forth, and it's quite the facility. And this was on not your first property, but another property you acquired in the area. Is that right?
Yeah. So our fruit stand was on 1136 Mackenzie Road. My parents lived there for a while, and in 2005, there was an estate sale. One of our neighbors, this is 790 Mackenzie, so just down the street is 1136 Mackenzie, where our fruit stand was, and we found out that the property was on sale. And my parents had known Charlie, that's what his name was, Charlie Hoffman, for his entire life. And he had a little bit of agriculture business going on, but he just lived on the property since he was a child, and he was in his late 80s and he passed away, and we were able to acquire the property.
Wow.
So, and
a lot of the structure on there, like your barn and some of the facility, was existing, wasn't it?
Yes. So there's a house on there. That's been there since the 30s. I think there's like 5 bedrooms, 1 washroom. There's a milk parlor or milk barn that we turned into we call it the farm events building. So we do weddings out of there. We'll do goat yoga out of there. We'll do lots of things. I mean, I had my engagement there. My brother had his engagement there when we got married. And we have a couple other buildings on there that are authentic.
Wow. And so just going deeper into the farm store itself, what's involved? What do you sell there? It's beyond what you're growing, I understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we sell the raw product, and we'll sell like berries, like strawberries, you see raspberries, peaches, cherries there. But we also sell value-added products. So I'm the director of winery operations, so we sell wine. My mom, they call her Mama Man, and she makes jams, jellies, hot sauces from the peppers that we grow, from the berries that we grow. So that's kind of the products that we sell. But the main thing, I think, when somebody comes to our farm is they have a really good experience. So we sell experiences. So whether it's you're buying admission to go into our petting zoo to pet a goat for the first time, or you're walking into our pumpkin patch in the forest to take beautiful pictures, we sell that experience.
It's a really interesting part of Abbotsford. You go down Sumas Way as if you're to go to the highway, and then you cut up and there's a bit of a hill, and when I got there it was very secluded, but it not that far away. It was pretty industrial, so it's like this little paradise in the middle, almost on the border, like you're almost right down there, and it's a really cool spot.
Yeah, they call Abbotsford the city in the country.
Okay.
So I think it fits the bill.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, working our way across the website, on the top left is goat yoga.
Yes.
So is this goats doing yoga? What is this?
A little bit. We got the idea from a couple of farm friends from the States, and they were doing goat yoga. And my sister, she's very creative as well. She probably gets it from my mom. And she said, why don't we do goat yoga? And we were doing this during the winter. So like November, December, January, we had very little income. And it became this big thing that became viral. So this is essentially what people do. They do yoga. We have a certified instructor that does yoga, but at the same time, you're able to pet goats. They give you a little bit of animal feed so you can feed the goats. They poop on you, they pee on you. It's the whole farm experience.
I did notice a video on Instagram where you're doing a photo shoot and they said, did it just? Yeah, it did.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really fun way to integrate something, that you do every day, like yoga, with agriculture.
It seems like a completely novel idea, and really just brings a smile to your face even saying those two words together, right? Is it quite popular?
It's very popular. We do it all the year. So we'll do goat yoga on Mother's Day, and people will bring their mothers. We do goat yoga and wine, so you can drink wine and do goat yoga. It's really fun. So super popular. It went viral, I think. It was on Daily Hive and things like that. So
wow.
Yeah.
So next up is the estate winery, which is now your baby. I want to dig really deeply into this because you spent some time with me showing me around the facility.
Yep.
I should have taken some pictures. I thought I could find some online of the super secret big canisters and everything, but it started pretty small, didn't it?
Yeah, super small. Super small. I think we had, our biggest tank was probably 700 liters. I wish I took more pictures back then, well, we have very few, so.
And you are primarily fruit wine.
Yes.
So what are the challenges of doing fruit wine versus traditional grape wine?
I think the biggest challenge is education. And education when it comes to creating a new product or offering is very expensive. So one way that we do that is one customer at a time. So whether it's somebody coming to our taste room that's never had fruit wine before, and they try our wine, they have an amazing experience, and they're like, wow, this is my favorite wine. Or whether it's myself going to Save On Foods and sampling wine for their customers, or going to Sardis Liquor Store and sampling wine to their customers. It's that education piece is word of mouth. It's very expensive, but it leaves a lasting impression. And that's a really big way that we've grown the fruit wine. So, yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges is everybody will have a negative connotation towards fruit wine because they think it's your grandpa's cherry wine that they had when they was a kid, but you realize this is pretty serious, delicious stuff. Like, we've won Canada's best fruit wine 3 times in the last 5 years. So.
One thing that struck me, I'm not a wine connoisseur or know much about it, but I noticed a big palette of sugar.
Yes.
And you mentioned that it's quite different than grape wine, and you're having to sweeten it. But in my mind, when I think of a strawberry or raspberry, those seem really sweet.
Yes.
But you mentioned that comparing that to a grape, there's so much more natural sugars in a grape. And so talk to me about the actual process of making fruit wine.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. So the reason why that sugar was there is we were blending in blueberries to start fermentation. So the natural sugar content in a blueberry is probably half as much as you need to hit our target alcohol. So the way that making wine or making beer works is the yeast will consume sugars in the raw material, whether it's blueberries or whether it's barley, and a byproduct of that will be ethanol. But if there's not enough sugar, you won't get your target ethanol or alcohol by volume. So, I mean, if you look at history, the Egyptians started making wine from honey because honey was super sweet. a very high sugar content. So they realized that you could ferment this stuff and have a good time. And then for thousands of years, they've been using grapes because of the naturally high sugar content. But next time you go to the superstore or go to a grocery store, have a handful of grapes and see how long it takes until you feel it's too rich because it's so sweet. But then go and have some blueberries. You can eat blueberries all day because there's less sugar and you don't get that overwhelmingness on your palate.
Got it.
Yeah.
And so you were thrown into the wine business. How did you come up with the recipes, the tastes? Is that on you, or are you working with consultants, or how does that work?
So we've worked with a consultant since 2013, since the beginning. He is a winemaking part of it. So everything that I've learned from winemaking comes from him. His name's Laurent Lafuente. He's a consultant. He works for a few companies here and there, but I think we're his longest client.
That name just makes it sound expensive.
Yeah,
like it's just
yeah. I think it's a great investment.
For sure.
But getting back to your original question is, we make wine for the consumer. So I was speaking to somebody earlier, and they asked me, how do you talk to your end consumer? And it's literally, we go and talk to the end consumer and see what they like. When we first started creating wine, we were like, everybody wants a dry wine. You look at a label, it'll say dry red, or it'll say dry white, and you assume that that's what people want. But once we made fruit wine, you can decide whether to make it sweeter or drier. And we started off with making dry blueberry wine, or dry blackberry wine, or dry strawberry rhubarb wine, and customers were like, this is not what I expected. So maybe they weren't upright, and they're like, this is not what I like. But just talking to enough customers, you realize that people think dry, but they enjoy sweet. If you go to a liquor store and you ask somebody what the best-selling wines are out there, they'll be like your red blends that are a little bit sweeter. So it's easy to consume. And that comes from being a little bit sweeter. So that's kind of how we engineer our wines. One of our best-selling products is our pumpkin spice wine. And that goes hand in hand with our business model, where our fall is our busiest time of year. So we have the pumpkin patch, corn maze, Canada's scariest corn maze, and we decided to make a product go hand in hand with that. That's how we will make some products as well.
What role has technology played in the evolution of the winery? Like you mentioned it being, how big was your largest container to start with?
Well, 700 liters.
And how big is your biggest one now?
Right now we have 2 tanks are 20,000 liters each.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's definitely expanded. I mean, it's not like Molson,
right,
but it's pretty big.
Yeah, no, it was impressive.
Reasonable now. Yeah.
And you've added a lot of automation from the bottling to the labeling to,
yes.
And there was a whole series of filters, and I imagine that's to get it without any residue and so forth. But has that just been a slow, steady drain of capital to put all of that in? Like, how have you expanded the business?
Well, we look at our future and we see where do we want to be in 5-10 years. And you look at what's going on now and you try to forecast that. So when we dump a bunch of capital, say, into the winery, we won't do it just because. We'll say that there is potential there. So that's why we invested in a bottling line, a fully automated bottling line, because we needed it. It wasn't because, we had some capital left over, this is where we should put it. It was just a necessity. And it slowly gets there. So like when I first started, I was literally corking one at a time. I was filling one at a time. And then it went from, okay, we're filling 4 at a time, to now we're capping them semi-automatically, to now, okay, we need to be fully automated. We got to think about efficiency. We're going to scale this. To now we have a full-fledged bottling line. So it slowly takes that evolution. And I think that's a really difficult way to go, because you have to have a lot of patience. Someone who starts a winery will think, I want to make millions of dollars right away. And that takes millions of dollars of capital. But if you look at it from a point of view of like, let's start this slow, let's see how it goes, and steadily reinvest into the business, eventually, if you're doing a great job, you're going to get to a point where you can just leap and make those investments.
You mentioned awards, and you've got a lot of awards. How important are they?
Honestly, that's a great question. From a consumer point of view, I mean, maybe it's because I'm in it, it doesn't make a huge impact. But I feel like where it really matters is for us as a winemaker, as my staff. They see the awards, and they're like, wow, we're doing a great job. Some of our biggest awards were that, like I mentioned, we won Canada's Best Fruit Wine at the All-Canadian Wine Championship. We got a trophy, you showed it earlier. We won Best Fruit Wine at the San Francisco International Wine Competition. We did that 2 years in a row. Every wine that wins Best of category actually gets featured in Forbes.com. So we have 2 wines featured in Forbes. So it's it's a really cool thing to show off. But I think it's more for your staff saying you're doing a great job. So
I guess it would also help potentially with the education side of things when you're introducing this category and then saying we are also recognized as being the best.
Absolutely.
Someone maybe that'll help them put it in their cart and yeah. So.
Yeah, it's more of like and we win an award. It's not like you have to buy this one because of this award. That's the way I look at it. So,
how many fruit wineries are there in British Columbia?
There's over 25.
Okay.
25 to 30, I would think.
So it's still pretty small in comparison to
small.
Traditional grape wineries.
Yeah.
But I guess that also helps you stand apart, right?
100%. I mean, I wish there was more farmers thinking about opening more fruit wineries, especially in the Fraser Valley. Think about all those small farmers that, farm 5 or 10 acres of blueberries. They're not making money, right? Maybe they're making a little bit at the end of the day, but if one year there's a bad year because of pests or because of the weather, they're screwed, right? But if you turn in that blueberry wine or blueberries into blueberry wine, you might have inventory until the next year, and you're able to make income. So I wish there was more competition. I think more competition creates a bigger market, and it creates more innovation. So it kind of keeps you on your toes.
Labels.
Yeah.
How important is that?
I think it's tremendously important. We get a lot of compliments on our labels. It's pretty straight to the point. We have some innovative labels like our pumpkin spice labels that say Mad Pumpkin. And that we kind of created that because fruit wine gets a negative connotation, and we were upset and mad about it. So we created a Mad line. So we call it Mad Pumpkin. We have an apple one that's called Mad Apple. We do Mad Berry. But we see our table wines here. This is our Strawberry Rhubarb. This is, when you go to a local liquor store, this is most likely the label that you'll see.
Tell me about Belzer.
Yes. So this is a really exciting product. It's short for Berry Wine Seltzer. It's a very innovative in that it's low sugar, low carb, low calorie, and it's made from real berries. So you think about seltzers and you think they're a dime a dozen. There's like Coors Light Seltzer, there's White Claw, there's Nude. And what they're doing is they're taking natural flavors, which if you look it up, it means anything that's made from plant or animals. So it could say watermelon, but maybe they're getting it from a plant or an animal somewhere. Whereas when we say raspberry, you open up the can and you pour it into a glass, they'll be real red because that's from the actual raspberries. If you pour out a White Claw that's mango, or you pour out a Nude that's lime, you pour them in a glass, they're both clear because there's no real ingredients in there. So we've made a seltzer made from real ingredients, which I think is the biggest selling point behind the product. And
is this fairly new?
Yeah, it's a couple years old.
And so I guess you have the same challenge in that you're defining a category with fruit wine, and then this is even something more unique. Have you found that people are open to trying it?
Yeah, people love it. People love it. We have some really good wholesale partners that have really pushed it.
Nice.
And we purposely made the can black because if you look on the market, most cans are like colorful, pink or white, so we wanted to stand out differently. Yeah.
You touched on it, but retail and distribution channels. You are in Save-On, you are in liquor stores. How did that start and how has it grown?
So this is a really good question actually. In 2014, we had a very terrible event. I'm not sure if you saw it online.
I did. I saw there was a fire.
A fire. So somebody came in the middle of the night, literally, I think like 11 or 12, and they burnt our building to the ground. And The reason why I'm mentioning that, you're talking about distribution, is we had no income coming in. This was the middle of July. We couldn't sell our crops. Whatever crops that we had picked were in a cooler. The cooler was in the building, and all has smoke taint. You can't sell it. And I was like, what can we do? So we had leftover wine inventory that was thankfully saved. And I was like, why don't we sell this to a liquor store? And the very first liquor store that I contacted was actually Garrison Liquor Store. And they're our oldest client. And they tried the product. As a young 20-year-old, I was so nervous. And they tried the product, and they're like, wow, this is amazing. I was like, what, really? It was almost like imposter syndrome. And then it just started one at a time. So the first year, maybe we got 20 customers, 20 liquor stores. The second year, maybe 50 more. Third year, maybe 100 more. And now we're in over 400 stores in BC. We're in about 100 stores in Alberta.
Wow.
So we're slowly expanding more and more. That side of the business is actually my passion. I love sales. I think it comes from being in a berry stand and selling berries for summer, on the summer. You're able to kind of convert that sale. And I've been to, out of those 400 BC stores, I've probably been to 95% of them.
Wow.
And literally gone to them, met the manager for the first time, and it's a really fun experience for me.
So that's the two sides to that story, I imagine. It's getting into those stores and on the shelves.
Yes.
And how do you get the bottles off the shelves and out the door?
That's the hardest part. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. I think I touched on it earlier, the education portion of it. So just literally what I did went from like 2015, 2016, 2017, every weekend, every Friday, Saturday. I hadn't met my wife at this time because she would probably want to approve of me going every weekend. But I would go to a liquor store and I would sample wine for customers. So 3 hours on a Friday, 4 hours on a Saturday, and I did it consistently every single weekend. And now, finally, 10 years later, we're seeing that pay off. We're finally seeing orders come in on their own. We're finally getting brand recognition. People know Maan Farms for our blackberry wine. Last year, I had a team of, I think it was about 25, and we did close to 200 tastings between November and December.
Wow.
So we really strongly believe in tastings. It's a really hard business, or a hard part of the business to scale because of the training, because you're trusting someone else to sell your product directly to the consumer. But that hiring aspect of it, we do it ourselves. And a lot of the time, it'll be myself training the staff member, or that staff member has worked for us, and they know our business, and they're able to sell the product.
And that's just on the winery side, but now that we're touching on it, how many people work entirely for Maan Farms over the course of a year?
Well, the peak time, the highest number of people on payroll were about 300 people. And that includes a lot of actors that work in our scary corn maze.
Okay.
That includes a lot of the part-time staff that work throughout the week in fall. That includes a lot of our farm workers. It's a combination of all of those. So I would say throughout the year, close to 500 people.
Wow, and a lot of it's seasonal, so it must be challenging to find folks. Is it students and a variety of different types of people? Yeah,
we get a lot of students. It's actually very rewarding when you get a student coming in. They work at our place for a summer, and you see them slowly, gradually improving, and they've learned those life skills. And it's really nice to be that first job for a lot of students, and they'll come back to us year after year until eventually say they graduate from university.
Wow.
And at that point, you're like, okay, maybe you can be a stronger component of our business. Or at that point, you're like, why are you still working for us? Go pursue your dream, right? So it's a really, really fun part. It's also super challenging too. Hiring is not easy. So, yeah.
Next up is weddings. And so this was started in 2016.
Yep.
You mentioned one of the farm buildings, it's probably 100 years oldish, was converted into this space, and it looks tremendous. It's got a lot of character, and looking through the website, there's definitely two categories: more of the traditional, what we're used to in Western culture, and then the 2-day South Asian style. And so those. Talk to me about that product. Who runs it? How does that all come to be? Yeah,
it's a really fun part of our business because you'll get people that come back to our farm that got married here in 2016, and now they have kids and a family, and you know it started at your place. That's super rewarding. But my sister, Gerline, and my mom, they have their own team, and they really focus on weddings, and they run that side. People, I think close to that time, 2016, 2017, farm weddings were becoming a lot more trendier. People didn't want to go to a traditional hall and get married. They wanted to come to a farm. And now we've been blessed enough to do upwards of 10 weddings a year. We're able to do traditional weddings like this. This is super fun for my parents to come and see this happening on their farm. Getting married in our culture is very, very religious, obviously. It's not even a 2-day event. It can be upwards to a week.
Wow.
Do all the ceremonies, all the events. The main ceremony would happen at our farm. So
That's amazing.
yeah.
There's a ton of logistics from all of the dishes and glasses and like, are you using a whole network of subcontractors? How does that all work?
We do a lot of it ourselves, to be honest. When you get married at our farm, it includes catering, and that catering is done by us.
Okay.
So when you see Mama Man, those are her recipes. She's in the kitchen cooking up food for 300, 400 people with her team. And that's what we do. We have our team of workers that'll set up the beautiful venue like this. They might bring in their own decor person to spruce it up, but in terms of the tables, the chairs, the catering, obviously the venue, we offer all of that in-house. Yeah.
So how far in advance, if I was planning a wedding and wanted to get a spot, am I able to get something in 2025, or would it be 2026 by this point?
There's some availability.
My wife is here. I'm not planning a wedding, but just per se.
Yeah, there should be a little bit of availability. I mean, obviously summer is the busiest time of year for weddings. If you want to get married or watching this, please hit us up. We're a great place to be. So,
Nice.
Yeah.
And so that's really grown, and it has been another thing you've added. Where do all these ideas come for new product lines, and where's the inspiration coming from?
Well, I think it originally started with, we have berries. How can you make berries in agriculture more fun? And now it's gone to the point of, where can we become the best agri-tourism destination in our area or in BC? And the way that we do that is we'll go to different networking events, my family and I. Last year, my mom and I went to Michigan, and we visited Lewis Family Farms. And they're known for having the best animals. So they have an animal experience where they have parakeets. You hold up a stick, and the parakeets come and they eat the stuff off your stick. And you're standing there, they're eating that. It's very immersive. They have capybaras, they have kangaroos on their farm. And they do very fun things, like they have an apple cannon, they have paintball, and they have these beautiful venues and buildings. So you go to these different places. It's very inspirational, so it keeps that spark going. And you're talking to, you usually go on a bus tour, so you're talking to very like-minded people. They might be in smaller operations, might be in huge operations, but you're able to get a little bit every time you go to these events. My parents have been to places like Spain and Portugal, and they've seen agritourism places out there. They've been to the UK, all over North America. So.
Wow, and you're bringing back some of those ideas and making them your own and launching them.
Yes.
You touched on it, but we'll dig into the Barnyard Adventureland, which started in 2014, and then you've continued to add. I think this is your fortress and various activities for families and kids, and there's a whole variety of different things that you've added over the years.
Yeah.
Talk to me about this whole line of the business.
This is honestly just about making the farm fun.
Yeah.
One of our first biggest things that we added was our bubble jumping pillow. And this is a great activity because whether you're 3 years old or you're 30 years old, you can have fun there. And then we added a zip line, fun for all ages. And then you can pet. Right now we have horses, there's alpacas, there's chickens, there's ducks, and all these fun activities. So something as small as a bubble hut you'll be surprised how long the lineup is for somebody to take and make a giant bubble. Because even if you're an adult, you want to be a kid, right? One of the funnest activities that we have, I don't see it here, but it's a new one we added. It's called tractor pull. So
right. Yeah, you showed me that.
Yeah. So we have different sizes of tractors that you can pull. A tug of war. It's really fun. So we add on more and more of those things every year.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's next on the list to add? The tractor pull is brand new, but is there stuff that you're thinking of 2-3 years out?
There always is.
Yeah.
Keep a secret.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
No breaking news here.
Yeah.
Birthday parties looks like a big thing as well, and
Yes.
and it's for young kids especially. And so what does a birthday party look like at Maan Farms?
Well, you can rent out a little space. You can cut your cake. The admission for kids will be free or included. And you can just have fun on the farm. What better place to have a birthday party than a farm?
Yeah.
All right?
Cool. The roadside stand, that piece of it, you showed me across the street. You had a whole area where it was you pick, but a little bit different. It's all kind of raised up, covered over. Where did that idea and innovation come from?
So my brother, Amir, he's an agriculture guy. He always looks for fun ideas as well when it comes to agriculture. If you open up his Instagram feed, it's all about strawberries. So this is something he brought back. I'm not sure where he saw it, but it's a standing strawberry you pick. So if you go to a typical strawberry farm, you have to bend your back.
Yeah. And
it's back-breaking work to pick strawberries. This is a one-of-a-kind experience where you're in these tunnels and you get to pick strawberries while you're standing. They're really, really beautiful. He also, created or brought back the idea of having a three-dimensional farm in a greenhouse on our farm. So we have one of Canada's only vertically integrated strawberry growing greenhouse.
Wow.
So on about, I would say 1 hectare, we have almost about 2 acres, we have almost about 10 acres of plants. So if you think about the land prices in BC, Chilliwack, Abbotsford, we're able to grow 4 or 5 times more on the same piece of land.
Wow, I've seen that. Well, lettuce is a big one. They're doing vertical farming and so forth. But on the berry side, that sounds very forward-thinking.
Yeah, it's a big investment, but at the end of the day, it's worth it. You're able to have strawberries in sometimes February, and you have them until November. And they're local BC strawberries. With all the news going on, hopefully there's less and less U.S. products coming in. Why buy Driscoll when you can buy local strawberries from your local farm? And that takes innovation.
So your marketing, photography, social media is at a very high level for an independent business. How are you doing that? Are you working with an outside agency? Do you have internal talent you've brought in? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, this is when I give our marketing manager a shout out. Her name is Becky. She does an exceptional job. I don't know, sometimes you just find somebody that does a great job, and she does. She's obsessed with social media. So you'll message her, 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday, and she replies right back to you because she's on social media trying to figure out what do we post tomorrow. And she works really well with our team. And she brings out the best parts of our farm. So I feel like finding that right person to do that was a cornerstone behind our social media. But also, my brother was a big part of that when we first started Instagram, Facebook. People loved watching videos of my mom cooking.
Right.
So that was kind of sparked the social media side as well. My sister does a lot of the social media, and we all work together with Becky. So we try our best to bring the best out of our farm.
Yeah, no,
That's our social
it definitely
media.
shows super well. And even you can see I didn't have much trouble finding beautiful imagery to include in my presentation here.
Yeah.
You've done a great job of kind of packaging things up, things like fall on the farm and the pumpkin patches. But the one that is terrifying to me is your haunted thing, which is the scariest corn maze in Canada.
Yes.
personally, it seems horrific.
Yeah.
Tell me
Yeah.
about this, and where did this come from?
So this is a really funny origin story. Kind of like how I grew up selling berries on a fruit stand. We started from our corn maze operation. The very first thing we did was we grew corn, and we cut out paths. And the actors was myself, my friends, my brother. We would go in and scare people with like chainsaws and like weed whackers. So that's kind of the origin story behind our corn maze. But now it's a huge attraction that brings people in from all over BC, I would say. So last year we had 3 different attractions. We had Slaughterhouse, which is the main corn maze. In total we have about 200 actors. We also had one attraction called The Way Down, which is a hooded haunt. So you're literally blindfolded and you go through.
And people pay for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Okay.
It's awesome. And then we have another haunt, which is actually my favorite. It's interactive. So you walk into a house and you're literally part of kind of like a play.
Okay.
So you're interacting with the actors. They can take you into a different room. They can make you a part of one of their props, like they'll pretend to cut off your head, things like that. It's really fun. And yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. My brother is kind of the brainchild behind that. He'll go to places like Atlanta and haunt conventions and bring back different ideas. And it's a it turned out to be an amazing thing.
Yeah, I searched for it, and there's so much user-generated content around this part of your business and
Yeah.
reviews, and this is incredible. And I imagine that just spurs it on, and this probably reaches far beyond some of your other things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes an impact. When you get scared.
Yeah, it makes an impact.
Yeah. I think anytime you can bring an emotion out of someone and they're having fun, that's going to be worth something.
You probably don't want to share, but are there any interactions that have gone horribly wrong with this, or like people actually freaking out, or they know what they're getting themselves into?
I mean, never. But some things that we have happened is people like pee their pants.
Okay. Yeah.
They'll if you're really too scared, you have to scream chicken.
Okay. So
And
there's
people-
a safe word of some sort.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
You'll get escorted out. So
Okay.
things like that. So.
Huh. And are people signing a waiver?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have
Okay.
to sign a waiver. Yeah. So.
Well, that's incredible. We touched on it, but social media marketing, you have close to 70,000 followers for
Yep.
a business. That's a gold mine, right?
It's not bad.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's just a blessing. I think a key part to our social media is we don't necessarily focus on the prettiest thing out there. We try to bring you the worms and the dirt. We try to bring you authenticity. And I think that's what really resonates. I'll take a picture in front of, like with my iPhone, in front of like a Save On Foods, and I'll say, there's such a blessing to be at Save On Foods. They're such a great partner with us, and that'll get a great amount of interaction and impact. But at the same time, we'll take a picture of the wine bottle just sitting on the desk by itself. It might be covered in awards, but that might not have the same impact. Mm-hmm. So the authenticity of like one of our farm workers that's been picking berries for, 10 years or 12 years and bringing that story out, that makes a lasting impact. And I think that's a really big part of our social media.
Yeah, and there's lots of reviews and posts on people's interactions, and I see they're talking about it, and yeah, it's been really incredible.
Yeah, that's our wine in a blood bag. It's a really fun idea. It fits our brand.
So it says on the website, scary things coming in 2025.
Yes.
Again, you're cooking up some new horrifying, terrifying adventures. And show of hands, how many folks would totally be into this? Okay, at least 70% of the audience. Some are
There you go.
staunchly, no, this is not my bag.
go.
Yeah,
Those
I'm somewhere in
70
between. I think I would do it, but I would be killing chicken by the 2-minute
Okay.
mark.
What usually happens is those 70%, they drag along the other 30%.
Yeah.
And they have to do it, so.
I imagine it's a group activity, right? You
Yeah.
don't get a lot of people just coming on their own. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to turn things over to the audience, but let's hear it for Maan Farms and your story. This is just absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
Gaurav, what you've done and your family is just really commendable.
Thank you so much.
We do have a mic there. I'm sure folks have some questions. Jan will grab it and turn it on. There's a red button on the bottom. And just hold that until you see something coming to life. There we go. Any questions? Aaron's good for a question.
I'm just wondering, you came into the business and you helped in such an important moment, it sounds like. When have been the moments that you've been able to reflect on the impact you've had on the farm?
I mean, maybe this is not really the right answer, but the way that my part of the business is, and if you ask the rest of my family, is I'm the mediator. So if my sister and my brother aren't getting along, or my family is just in flux, whatever you want to call it, I'm kind of the mediator and I'll help calm things down. So I think that's a big part that I'll own, and that I'm happy with. I mean, the awards are great. Getting our wine to Superstore or Sale on Foods is awesome. But I think that's, keeping the family together, that's a very rewarding thing.
On that note, has that made a difference now that some of the bigger retail chains are allowed to sell alcohol? Has that been impactful?
Oh yeah, huge.
Yeah.
Huge. I think it just gives people more of an opportunity to support local. Mm-hmm. For a long time, BC wineries weren't able to sell at a grocery store. But think about the volume of people that walk into a grocery store that want to buy a bottle of wine that goes with whatever they're having for dinner or lunch. And so just that synergy there was massive.
Another question? We've got one for Joe here.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the presentation. How many people do you have go through your farm every year?
So it ranges between, I would say, we don't know exactly, but close to about 80,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah. I think our busiest weekend, we had over 10,000 people on our farm. And that was probably a little bit too busy. Yeah.
Thank you for a great presentation. You talked a bit about the vertical farming for strawberries.
Yeah.
Do you see the opportunities to look at other products using the vertical farm concept?
Yeah, we've looked at things like blackberries and raspberries. We'll be looking at more of those fruits as well.
Any other takers?
What is your favorite wine?
People always ask me, as a winemaker, when you look at when you're making wine, they're all your babies. So I would say everyone, you can't pick a favorite.
Oh, come on.
No.
Come on.
No, I'm serious. 100%. And then if you really push me, I'll say the one that sells the best.
Okay.
So
And which is?
our blackberry wine
Blackberry,
is
okay.
exceptionally. I think it was the best-selling fruit wine in BC in 2024. So, yeah.
Anybody else? Well, let's once again hear it for Gaurav. I got a little bit of housekeeping. We do a couple of regular events here every month. One is Creative Third Thursdays. Ironically, not happening this Creative Third Thursday because we have our annual Pecha Kucha event, but Creative Third Thursdays will return in March. Pecha Kucha is a very interesting presentation format. It's 20 slides that advance every 20 seconds, and it's like a freight train once you get on it, apparently, because I'm doing one this year and have been practicing, and it's quite something. So we've got 7 speakers. That's lined up for this Thursday. We do have a few extra spaces. All of the funds raised from that go to the Chilliwack Community Film Fund, which helps fund student filmmaking in Chilliwack. So check that out. I think you'll really like it. Launch Stories happens on the 3rd Tuesday of every month. We've got our next month guest lined up already, so keep an eye out for that. And that's Launch Stories. Gaurav did bring some wine, so I'm hoping you guys had a chance to try that, and hopefully it's the blackberry, because apparently that's the best. So. But thank you so much.